I never suspected my sister Linda would betray me over something as trivial as our grandmother's necklace. I mean, this was Linda, my older sister, who had always been the confident one, the one who practically glowed in any room she entered. We had our sibling squabbles over the years, sure, but nothing that went beyond the usual sisterly spats. Our grandmother was a formidable woman, full of warmth and stories that seemed to reach back centuries. She'd sit us down during winter evenings, share tales from her youth, her eyes twinkling behind her glasses. Many of her stories were woven around her prized possessions, most notably that necklace. It wasn't the most extravagant piece, but it held a special significance. She'd once promised it to me during one of those long winter chats, her hand resting firmly on mine, her voice assuring me it was meant for me. When Grandma passed away, grief settled over the family like a soft, unyielding fog. Sorting through her belongings was a somber affair, one filled with echoes of her laughter and the scent of her favorite lavender perfume. The necklace, however, was nowhere to be found in her jewelry box. I remember feeling a slight twinge of concern but quickly brushed it aside, assuming it might have been misplaced amid the chaos of her passing. Linda was all tears and compassion then, wrapping her arms around me as I quietly mentioned the missing necklace. Her reaction seemed genuine, and perhaps that's what threw me off the scent. She suggested, with an air of rehearsed shock, that maybe the housekeeper had taken it. I dismissed the notion, not wanting to think ill of anyone. Linda's voice was a little too as she reassured me she'd look into it. I wanted to believe her. Life moved on in its usual way, with work, family gatherings, and the occasional weekend brunch with Linda. Days turned into months, and the matter of the necklace slowly faded into the background, a dull thorn rather than a piercing wound. And then came Linda's engagement party. It was a lavish affair, filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the scent of roses. As I watched her glide through the room, effortlessly the star of the evening, something caught my eye. A familiar glint at her neck, as if it called to me alone. There it was, the necklace that had seemingly vanished, now resting against Linda's skin, shimmering under the soft lighting. Recognition hit me like a cold wave, but I didn't let it ripple through my demeanor. I knew better than to create a scene. Instead, I felt an odd sense of calm settle in. I needed proof, something undeniable to back up my suspicions. I started by reaching out to our cousin Emily, who had a knack for remembering details from conversations that escaped the rest of us. Emily had witnessed Grandma declare her intentions about the necklace once, and I hoped she'd recall something crucial. Later that week, we met over coffee, and as I broached the subject, Emily's eyes lit up with memory. She vividly recounted that evening at Grandma's, recalling how I had been the one trusted with the heirloom. Her words were the first solid thread in the unraveling of the betrayal. Emily's help was invaluable, but I needed more than verbal confirmation. I hunted down a copy of the will, a task waylaid by red tape and tedious bureaucracy. Finally, the day came when I held it in my hands, the words clear and resolute. Armed with this evidence, I knew confronting Linda was inevitable. I waited until the next family dinner, a usually joyful occasion. As we gathered around the table, I couldn't help but notice how the room felt slightly off, like a painting hung slightly askew. But I pressed on, my heart steady, waiting for the right moment. After the plates were cleared and conversation swayed towards reminiscing about Grandma, I found my opening. With precision, I presented the will, the proof of Grandma's intentions, and the weight of betrayal that had silently shadowed our family. Linda's face fell, her expression shifting from surprise to disbelief, and then to something resembling remorse. The room was silent, save for the soft ticking of the clock in the corner. Linda's fiancé, who had no inkling of this family drama, turned to her with a look of clear disappointment. It was a fallout, as elegant as it was profound. As embarrassed as Linda was, she knew there was no room for further lies or excuses. In the end, she returned the necklace to me, slipping it into my hands with no words exchanged. Our relationship was forever altered, the bond of trust now fractured, but I felt a quiet triumph in knowing justice had been served. I hadn't sought revenge in the traditional sense, merely a restoration of what was rightfully mine. The necklace now rests safely with me, a reminder not just of Grandma's love, but of the strength it took to reclaim it. As for Linda, time will tell if our sisterly bond can be mended. For now, I'm content with the small victory, a win over betrayal that felt as inevitable as the turning of the seasons. Grandma's passing left a void in our lives, one that felt too immense to fill with mere trinkets or words. Still, the small comforts she left behind, things that held stories and whispers of shared moments, were cherished. The necklace was one such treasure, promised to me in a gentle conversation we had by the fireplace one chilly winter evening. She had said it was hers when she met Grandpa, a symbol of their enduring love. Knowing it would be mine felt like inheriting a piece of that history. When the time came to sift through her belongings, the weight of her absence made each touch a careful, deliberate gesture. Dad, my sister Linda and I gathered around, going through keepsakes that seemed to echo with memories. I waited, knowing what I sought, until we reached her jewelry box. It sat on her vanity, polished from years of use, as familiar to me as the scent of her lavender perfume. But when I lifted the lid, the necklace was missing. Linda stood beside me. She was quick with her suggestions, gesturing to the box as if it held all the answers. Maybe the housekeeper misplaced it, she said, her tone casting doubt without a blink. I didn't argue. I didn't trust the wobble in my voice if I spoke. Instead, I nodded, the doubt creeping into my gut like an unwelcome guest. Dad shrugged it off, chalking it up to forgetfulness or oversight, and the conversation moved on, but that absence lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that something important had slipped through my fingers. Grandma's promise had been clear, ringing in my memory with a bittersweet clarity. The question remained, hovering like the perpetual shadow of a summer cloud. Where had the necklace gone? I busied myself with work and the usual demands of life, tucking the mystery into the back of my mind. Yet, every time Grandma's memory came to me, when I passed by her photograph on my dresser, or when her favorite song played on the radio, it resurfaced, gnawing softly at the edges of my thoughts. It was a quiet burden, one that I carried alone, the way we sometimes bear secrets that carve silent paths through the heart. The day of Linda's engagement party arrived, a lavish affair that seemed to outshine the usual family gatherings. Linda, radiant and animated, flitted from guest to guest. I watched her from a distance, wearing the smile one dons for the sake of appearances, blending in with the chatter and clinking glasses. She wore a dress that shimmered, catching the light with each movement, but it was the necklace that drew my eye, a familiar glint I could not ignore. Recognition hit me with a cold clarity. It hung around her neck, resting against her skin as if it belonged, its stones catching the light with every turn she made. I steeled myself, my heart a cacophony of disbelief and hurt. Confronting her in front of everyone would have been a mistake. I knew there needed to be proof, something undeniable to hold against her eventual denials. And so, I resolved to find it. In the following weeks, quietly and without fanfare, I reached out to our cousin Lisa, who had been present when Grandma's will was discussed. Lisa, ever meticulous, remembered the details better than most. Over coffee, I recounted my suspicions, feeling the words heavy on my tongue. She nodded, sympathy in her gaze, and agreed to help. Some things are worth more than the weight of gold. When the copy of the will finally reached me, seeing my name beside the necklace felt like an affirmation. I had what I needed. There would be no more deceit, no more shadowy doubts. The time had come to bring light to what should have been out in the open all along. I chose a quiet family dinner, hoping for an intimate setting to lay it all before her. When the moment came, I slid the will across the table towards Linda, its significance needing no explanation. Her face paled, the party's sheen replaced by a forced calm. The rest of the family paused. Forks midair, conversation stilled. Linda's eyes met mine, searching for forgiveness or understanding I couldn't yet offer. Her demeanor shifted, the bravado that had once been so evident dimming like waning daylight. At that moment, she knew there was nowhere to hide. Dad looked between us, a silent witness to the unfolding drama, his expression a mix of confusion and slowly dawning understanding. Linda's fiancé, unaware until now of any undercurrents, furrowed his brow, the disappointment evident. The room's atmosphere tightened, emotions thick enough to touch. Finally, Linda spoke, her voice, words careful and measured. She acknowledged the truth, her admission more resignation than apology. With no further protest, she promised to return it, her eyes leaving mine to linger on the floor. The necklace returned to me later that night, placed in my hands with the understanding that things had changed between us irrevocably. It rested in my palm, a weight restored, but tinged with the knowledge of betrayal. The justice I sought wasn't about vengeance, it was about righting a wrong, ensuring Grandma's wishes were honored. As I tucked the necklace safely away, I felt the quiet triumph of a battle fought not with harsh words, but with resolve. Our bond as sisters might never be what it once was, but there was peace in knowing that the past at least had been set right. Whether time could heal the rift between us remained a question for the future, but Grandma's legacy was once more secure in my hands. For now, I take solace in this small victory, the kind that affirms who you are when faced with the unexpected turns of those you trust. Life has taught me that strength often arises from the most unexpected places, one quiet act of justice at a time. It started on an ordinary afternoon. The sun was streaming through the windows, casting a soft glow on Grandma's old furniture. I remember the anticipation I felt as I stood before her jewelry box, ready to see the necklace she'd promised me. It should have been in its usual corner, nestled among her other keepsakes, but when I opened the box, it was gone. I felt a sharp pang of disbelief. My mind raced through all the possible explanations. Maybe Grandma had moved it somewhere else. Perhaps it was being polished or repaired. Yet, as I searched every nook and cranny, the unsettling realization that it was missing began to settle in like a stone in my stomach. Linda was there when I first noticed. She breezed into the room, all smiles, her laughter echoing through the hallway. When I told her about the missing necklace, she widened her eyes, feigning ignorance. "You're kidding," she said, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. "How could it just disappear?" As I stood there trying to process everything, Linda took charge, her tone shifting to something almost offhand. "You know," she suggested, "maybe that new housekeeper misplaced it. She's always rushing things." She shot me a quick glance as if expecting agreement. I didn't argue, but the suggestion felt wrong, like a coat that didn't fit. Our housekeeper, Marjorie, had worked with Grandma for years with unwavering loyalty. The idea that she would suddenly become careless was almost laughable. Yet, I said nothing, letting Linda's narrative take over the room. Days turned into weeks, and the absence of the necklace felt like a constant reminder of loss. I tried to convince myself that maybe Linda was right, though in my heart I felt the nagging pull of doubt. Our conversations became increasingly strained, every interaction laced with an undercurrent of something unspoken. I tried to bring it up again casually, during a lazy afternoon when Linda and I were sipping coffee in the garden. She listened, nodding sympathetically, then quickly changed the subject, her laughter rolling over my words like a breeze dispersing fog. It was clear to me then, this was not a matter she was willing to entertain seriously. Trying to push the thought away was like trying to ignore an itch. It lingered, refusing to be forgotten. And yet I maintained my silence, trusting that in time the truth would somehow reveal itself. Months went by, and the memory of the necklace was slowly dimming, an unwelcome shadow in the back of my mind. It was almost easier to pretend it had never existed than to confront the festering wound of betrayal I didn't yet fully understand. Then came Linda's engagement party, a celebration that was supposed to be joyful, full of love and future promises. I arrived early, wanting to support her, despite the simmering unease. The room was abuzz with chatter and the clinking of glasses as friends and family gathered to celebrate her new beginning. At some point during the evening, as I maneuvered through the crowd, I caught a glimpse of Linda across the room. She was laughing, her fiancé's arm draped casually over her shoulders as they mingled. And that's when I saw it, the unmistakable gleam of Grandma's necklace draping elegantly around her neck, like a ghost of promises broken. I felt my breath catch, the room spinning slightly as reality hit with cold precision. The betrayal was no longer a nebulous suspicion, it was a tangible, glittering truth. Even in a room full of people, I stood there utterly alone, the air thick with humiliation and anger. But I kept my composure. Instead of making a scene, I resolved to find the truth quietly, like tracing the origins of a whisper in a crowded room. I needed proof, a foundation for the storm that brewed silently within me. I reached out to our cousin, someone who might have noticed the details I had missed, and she remembered reading the will alongside Grandma's solicitor. Her words, calm and clear, confirmed what I needed to know. Grandma had indeed left the necklace to me. That piece of paper was more than proof. It was the key to restoring not just the necklace, but the fractured pieces of my integrity. In the following days, I prepared. I felt stronger, more determined, like a force moving with quiet purpose. As I waited for the right moment, I found myself thinking about Grandma, not with sorrow, but with the resolve to honor her wishes. Finally, at a family dinner, I unveiled the truth, laying the document on the polished dining table. The room seemed to hold its breath, the silence thick enough to carve with a knife. Linda's face paled, her eyes meeting mine with a mix of shock and realization as her fiancé's grip on her shoulder slackened. Disappointment clear in his gaze. In the ensuing silence, I felt the weight of what had transpired lift slightly. There was no need for raised voices or accusations. The evidence spoke louder than any words I could muster, and its quiet authority was my greatest ally. Linda returned the necklace to me later that night, placed in my hands with the understanding that things had changed between us irrevocably. It rested in my palm, a weight restored, but tinged with the knowledge of betrayal. The justice I sought wasn't about vengeance. It was about righting a wrong, ensuring Grandma's wishes were honored. As I tucked the necklace safely away, I felt the quiet triumph of a battle fought not with harsh words, but with resolve. Our bond as sisters might never be what it once was, but there was peace in knowing that the past, at least, had been set right. Whether time could heal the rift between us remained a question for the future, but Grandma's legacy was once more secure in my hands. For now, I take solace in this small victory, the kind that affirms who you are when faced with the unexpected turns of those you trust. Life has taught me that strength often arises from the most unexpected places, one quiet act of justice at a time. As the evening unfolded at Linda's engagement party, the room buzzed with laughter and chatter. I stood back, absorbing the joyful atmosphere. This was Linda's night, a celebration of her future, and part of me was genuinely happy for her. As I sipped my drink, my eyes wandered around the room, catching familiar faces and warm smiles. Then, amid the glimmer of lights and the soft music, something caught my attention. Linking all of this together in that moment was a necklace, but not just any necklace. The delicate pearls and the ruby pendant that hung around Linda's neck seemed to emit a light of their own, pulling me in with an uncomfortable familiarity. Recognition struck like a cold wave pulling me under. Grandma's necklace. How could it be? I blinked, hoping I was wrong, but there it was, gleaming unmistakably in the soft glow. My gaze snapped back to Linda. She laughed, basked in the attention of her guests, completely unaware of the turmoil brewing in my chest. Her fingers danced over the necklace now and then, a casual touch that spoke of possession and comfort, a possession that should have been mine. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, to march across the room and demand answers. But the part of me that knew Linda, the part that remembered her quick words and convincing lies, held me back. This was too important to mishandle. I needed proof, not just suspicion. I spent the rest of the evening in a haze, watching Linda from a distance, the shine of the necklace like a constant reminder of her deceit. Every laugh she shared, every toast she received, felt like a betrayal anew. Yet I knew I had to remain, my face a mask of calm that belied the storm inside. That night, I didn't sleep much. My mind raced, sorting through memories, trying to recall every conversation with Grandma about her prized necklace. I remembered her telling me how special it was, a piece passed down through generations, meant for someone who would treasure it as she had. And I remembered her promise, the promise that I would one day wear it. The next day, I reached out to our cousin Sarah, who had been the executor of Grandma's will. I planned my approach carefully. Over coffee, I mentioned the necklace casually, as though it were a lingering curiosity and nothing more. Sarah, unaware of the storm beneath my calm, confirmed what I already remembered. Grandma had indeed bequeathed the necklace to me. With this knowledge solidifying my resolve, I knew what I had to do. But confrontation wasn't my style. I needed something irrefutable. I decided to gather all the necessary documents, irrefutable proof of what Grandma had intended. It took a bit of time, and each day stretched longer than the last as I waited for the right moment. That moment came during a family dinner. The warmth of our gathering barely touched me. My mind was set on the task at hand. As conversations flowed around me, I waited for a lull, a moment to gently introduce the subject without raising suspicion. Finally, I found my opening. With a calm voice, I spoke about the importance of family heirlooms, their stories, and how they connect us to our past. Then, carefully, I brought up the necklace. Linda's gaze flicked to mine, her smile unwavering at first. But as I continued, revealing the details of the will, each word dropped like a stone into the stillness that settled over the table. I watched her face, saw the change, the falter in her smile, the tightening of her fingers around her glass. "Are you saying I took it?" she asked, her voice masking indignation, but there was a tremor beneath it. I nodded, presenting the documents as calmly as I could, the weight of them heavy in my hand. "This is what Grandma wanted," I said, my voice firm but steady. The room seemed to hold its breath, all eyes on Linda. Her fiancé, sitting beside her, looked from me to her, his expression shifting from confusion to disappointment. The silence was louder than any words that might have been spoken. I didn't need to say more. The proof lay open between us, speaking the truth I had unearthed from beneath layers of deception. Linda's facade cracked, the mask she wore slipping away, leaving only reality behind. Her eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of something I hadn't expected. Regret, perhaps, or maybe just the realization of a line crossed too far. She nodded, a silent acknowledgement of a truth she couldn't deny any longer. In the days that followed, Linda returned the necklace to me, placed in my hands with the understanding that things had changed between us irrevocably. It rested in my palm, a weight restored, but tinged with the knowledge of betrayal. The justice I sought wasn't about vengeance, it was about righting a wrong, ensuring Grandma's wishes were honored. As I tucked the necklace safely away, I felt the quiet triumph of a battle fought not with harsh words, but with resolve. Our bond as sisters might never be what it once was, but there was peace in knowing that the past, at least, had been set right. Whether time could heal the rift between us remained a question for the future, but Grandma's legacy was once more secure in my hands. For now, I take solace in this small victory, the kind that affirms who you are when faced with the unexpected turns of those you trust. Life has taught me that strength often arises from the most unexpected places, one quiet act of justice at a time. The realization that my sister had deceived me cut. It was a wound I hadn't anticipated, and one I couldn't let fester. Instead of making a scene at her engagement party, where smiles and congratulations were the currency of exchange, I chose a quieter path. My resolve was to seek the truth, to untangle the web of lies Linda had spun. I decided my first step would be to dig into the details of Grandma's will. Cousin Jake, always good at remembering the fine print of family matters, was my best hope. We hadn't spoken much since Grandma's funeral, but his recollection of events was near legendary. I hoped he'd remember enough to confirm what I needed. Reaching out to him wasn't as awkward as I feared. When I called, he picked up immediately, his usual cheerful tone wrapping around me like an old sweater. I asked about the will, trying to keep my voice, as if this were a casual inquiry rather than a quest for truth. He listened patiently, then began to recount the details he'd committed to memory after hearing the will being read to the family. "I'm pretty sure," he said. "Grandma specifically mentioned you for the necklace. Remember, she used to call it your piece whenever she wore it." I nodded, more to myself than to him, feeling a mix of gratitude and determination. Jake's confirmation was a small comfort in a sea of betrayal. If his memory served right, then there was proof, and proof meant I had power to reclaim what was mine. Getting my hands on a copy of the will wasn't straightforward. The lawyer who had handled Grandma's estate worked in a different city, and everything seemed to take longer than it should. But I persisted. Each step felt like an echo in the growing silence between Linda and me. We spoke less, our interactions reduced to necessity rather than sisterly affection. When the will finally arrived, a crisp packet of legal documents, my heart pounded as I read through the lines. Jake had been right. Grandma had indeed left the necklace to me. I felt a strange quiet, knowing that her wishes were clear and undeniable. The truth, held in my hands, was a bittersweet victory. Nobody wants to believe their sibling capable of such deceit. I wrestled with disappointment, but there was no way to avoid the inevitable confrontation. Part of me dreaded it, but a larger part, the one that sought justice, pushed me forward. Family dinners were always lively affairs, filled with laughter and shared stories. This particular evening, though, was different. The air felt heavier, charged with the anticipation of what was to come. Linda sat across from me, her eyes bright, but there was a seed of guilt growing there, one that became more evident each time she glanced at me. I waited until after the meal. The plates had been cleared, and the usual hum of conversation had softened. I placed the will gently on the table, its presence alone enough to silence the room. "I have something to share," I said, meeting Linda's gaze, my own eyes steady. The moment of truth came with a quiet, almost whisper. I explained what I'd discovered, laying out the facts without embellishment. "Grandma intended the necklace for me," I concluded, the weariness in my voice carrying the weight of days spent unraveling this deception. Linda's face paled, the color draining almost as quickly as her excuses sprang forth. "I didn't mean it was a mistake," she started, her words a tangle of half-hearted attempts to justify what couldn't be justified. Her fiancé's expression shifted from confidence to confusion, his eyes narrowing with each word she spoke. In that moment, I realized the depth of my sister's betrayal was matched only by her inability to own up to it. I didn't need to argue or raise my voice. The proof was undeniable. The truth had a way of making itself evident, of casting light where shadows hoped to linger. Linda had no choice but to face the consequences. Her fiancé's disappointment was a palpable thing, cutting through any attempt she made to brush off the significance of what she'd done. In the silence that followed, I felt the shift between us, a rift opening wider with each passing second. There was no satisfaction in seeing her discomfort, only a quiet resignation that this was the necessary outcome. As Linda finally reached for the clasp of the necklace, the one she'd so eagerly worn as if it belonged to her, I felt a strange peace settle over me. She returned it, placing it in my hands with a forced smile that did little to mask her. Her gesture was lackluster, a surrender rather than reconciliation. The bond we shared, once a thing of shared memories and laughter, now felt like a series of fractures. Each piece snapped under the weight of what she'd done. I placed the necklace into my bag, its familiarity a comforting weight. The room was hushed, the air thick with unspoken thoughts. I slipped away soon after, leaving the remnants of the dinner behind. The drive home was quiet, a time to reflect on everything that had transpired. Returning home, I sat alone in the dim light of my living room. The necklace lay before me, a testament to my determination and to the justice I'd sought. I was reminded of Grandma, her voice a soft echo in my mind, affirming all I'd known to be true. The battle had been won, but the cost, our relationship, was high. Whether or not Linda would ever come to terms with what she'd done, I couldn't say. Time, as ever, would tell. For now, I had the solace of truth, the certainty of what was rightfully mine resting in my hands like an anchor against the uncertainties of family and betrayal. The proof in my hands felt like both a weapon and a shield. I sat there, staring at the document my cousin had helped me find, my fingers tracing the familiar script. Grandma's wishes were clear, and I finally had the evidence that proved it. The weight of the necklace in my bag was a reminder of the evening I was headed into. A family dinner had been planned, months in the making, and I knew this was the moment. The room was filled with the usual buzz of family voices when I arrived. Jokes tossed across the table, stories shared with gusto. Everything felt as it should, yet somehow hollow. My eyes found Linda, and as if sensing my gaze, she looked up, a smile flickering across her lips. It was a practiced smile, one meant to gloss over the cracks that had begun to show between us. I took my seat, placing the will beside me, its presence a small comfort. Dinner unfolded, courses served with the usual flourish. My mind was elsewhere, my focus shifting back to the envelope beside me. The moment demanded patience, yet anticipation coiled tightly within me. As conversations waned into comfortable silence, I took a breath, feeling the room around me sharpen into focus. I cleared my throat, the sound slicing through the quiet. I explained that I had something to share, and though my voice was calm, authority seeped into every word. Eyes turned to me, curiosity mingling with concern. I held up the document, watching Linda's face closely. Her expression remained composed, almost curious, as if truly unaware of what was coming. I unfolded the will slowly, reading aloud the part that concerned the necklace. My voice didn't waver, it held steady with a conviction that only truth provides. By the time the words left my mouth, Linda's composure had slipped. Her eyes darted to the necklace she wore, the metallic glint catching the light, a beacon of her betrayal laid bare before everyone. The silence that followed was a different kind of suffocating, heavy with the weight of realization. Others looked between us, comprehension dawning. Her fiancé turned to her, disappointment clouding his features. The perfect picture Linda had painted began to crack, and I watched, expressionless as it unfolded. She tried to defend herself, words tripping over each other in a hasty attempt to regain control. But excuses fell flat, her explanations tumbling into the void of disbelief around her. The room had shifted, the atmosphere no longer hers to command. I didn't argue, there was no need. The will was proof enough, and everyone knew it. Her lies lay exposed, and there was nothing Linda could do to erase the truth that now stood center stage. I watched her squirm, a part of me aching for the loss of the sister I once thought I had, yet another part quietly triumphant in the validation I had fought for. Family members began to murmur, quiet words exchanged, trust once so easily given, now strained. Linda's eyes met mine across the table, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of remorse. But it was fleeting, gone before I could truly grasp it. As the evening drew to a close, I approached her, my steps measured. The room buzzed around us, yet this moment felt suspended, outside of time. I asked for the necklace back, my words holding a firmness that left no room for negotiation. Her hand went to her neck, fingers tracing the chain one last time before unclasping it with trembling hands. The necklace returned to my possession where it had always belonged. Relief washed over me as it settled into my palm, a long-buried weight lifted. I thanked her, my voice calm, devoid of malice, and left the necklace's cold links dangling freely from my fingers. The simplicity of it was stunning, the finality quietly echoing between us. Walking away, I felt both lighter and heavier. The path we had taken was one of inevitability, of choices made and truths uncovered. Whether Linda recognized the gravity of her actions or not, the necklace, now reclaimed, symbolized more than just a family heirloom. It spoke of promises kept across generations, of justice sought and found. I knew our relationship would never be the same. Trust once fractured is rarely restored, but in this new landscape, I held on to what was certain. I had found my resolve, fortified by the clarity of truth. As I left, the evening air wrapped around me, a crisp reminder of the night's revelations and the enduring bond I would always share with Grandma. Arriving home, I placed the necklace gently into its rightful place. It gleamed in the low light, a silent testament to the journey it had taken as much as I had. I sat with it a while, tracing the familiar curve of each link, feeling Grandma's presence in the calm that now settled over me. And while the victory was bittersweet, the justice served was a balm that eased the sting of betrayal. I found solace there, in the quiet assurance that truth, though sometimes buried, never remains hidden forever. The family dinner was a quiet affair at first, the kind where the clinking of cutlery fills the spaces between polite but superficial conversation. I waited patiently, watching Linda with a calm that belied the tension simmering beneath my skin. She sat across from me, her laughter just a bit too loud, her gestures too grand. It all felt like a performance, now that I knew the truth. As the meal drew to a close, I finally found my moment. I cleared my throat, drawing the room's attention. I found something interesting, I began, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. All eyes turned toward me, anticipation mixing with curiosity. I placed the papers on the table, the will open to the relevant page. Linda's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly masked it, leaning forward with a tilt of her head. "What is it, dear?" she asked, her tone dripping with a false warmth that made my skin crawl. "Grandma's will," I said simply, my eyes never leaving hers. "It states quite clearly that the necklace was meant to be given to me." The room fell silent, the words hung in the air like a challenge. Her fiancé shifted uncomfortably beside her, his brow furrowed as he glanced between the will and Linda. He'd been charmed by her, as so many were. But now doubt crept into his expression. Linda's face turned an alarming shade of pale. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, her voice trembling slightly, betraying her. "I'm sure it's a mistake. I didn't argue. I didn't need to." The truth was laid bare on the table, undeniable. "It's all there, in black and white," I replied, my tone unwavering. "Perhaps you forgot?" Her facade cracked, the veneer of sisterly affection slipping away. Her eyes hardened, a sharpness replacing her earlier warmth. "I didn't take it," she insisted. But the desperation in her voice echoed louder than her words. The family exchanged glances, the weight of the revelation sinking in. My mother sat back, her expression a complex mix of disappointment and sadness. My heart ached briefly for causing her pain, but I knew it was necessary. Secrets, once revealed, lose their power. Safety found not in shadows, but in the light. Linda's fiancé spoke then, his voice soft but firm. "Linda, if you knew it wasn't yours?" His words lingered, unfinished but potent. He didn't need to say more. The implication was clear. Linda's anger flickered to life, her temper barely restrained. But even as she spoke, her earlier bravado was gone. "Fine," she snapped, pushing her chair back and standing abruptly. The scrape of wood against wood echoed harshly. "If it means so much to you, take it." She unclasped the necklace with shaky hands, her earlier elegance replaced by a rough, resentful gesture. The necklace fell into my palm, cool and reassuring. "Thank you," I said, my tone devoid of triumph, just the quiet satisfaction of resolution. The moment stretched, the air thick with unspoken words and regrets. With the necklace finally returned, Linda's defiance crumbled. The room seemed to exhale collectively. Her fiancé, still silent, seemed older somehow, weighed down by the shift in his perception of her. I wish things had been different, I said to her, wishing desperately that the past could be unwound, that trust could be rebuilt. But sometimes, the only way forward is through the jagged path the truth has carved. As we left the table, I felt the weight of Grandma's necklace settle around my neck, a comforting presence. It was a reminder of promises fulfilled, of the strength it takes to stand firm in the face of betrayal. Outside, the evening air was cool and soothing against my skin. A world of change lay behind me, yet I felt lighter, unburdened by the secrets that had clouded our family. And though the rift with Linda might never fully heal, I realized that some truths, once uncovered, guide us toward a path that may not be easy, but is always right. Days after the dinner, I couldn't resist touching the delicate chain around my neck. The necklace felt more than just an inheritance. It felt like vindication. I knew Grandma never intended for her gift to become collateral damage in a web of deceit, but in wrestling it back, I had reclaimed something beyond a piece of jewelry. Life continued, but the contours of my relationship with Linda had indelibly shifted. She tried reaching out once or twice, her words tinged with apologies that sounded hollow from afar. I often wondered what drove her to take the necklace in the first place. Was it jealousy, greed, or something else entirely? The answer remained elusive, much like the trust we once shared. As the weeks turned into months, that era of betrayal settled into the past. Family gatherings were different now. Linda and I maintained a civil distance. Our conversations were polite, often revolving strictly around the weather or shared childhood memories. Safe topics, devoid of the fraught emotions still lingering beneath the surface. Yet, in that very distance, I found a strange sense of clarity. I learned the fragile yet resilient nature of familial bonds. They can stretch and contort, but sometimes reach a breaking point that requires new boundaries, ones defined by painful lessons. In the quiet spaces of my heart, I held no anger towards Linda. Disappointment, perhaps, but mostly a profound sense of resolve. The necklace had come back to me, true to Grandma's wishes. It was a testament to the strength it takes to stand firm in one's truth, even when faced with the fracturing of family ties. Time, as it does, softened the edges of our shared wound. That didn't mean forgetting or forgiving entirely, but it did mean moving forward. I accepted the new dynamic with Linda with a steadiness that came from realizing that some relationships are better rebuilt with distance, honesty, and very clear parameters. The necklace, whenever I wore it, felt like an anchor, a physical reminder of a promise kept and a lesson learned. Though the betrayal had cut deep, it gifted me with a deeper understanding of myself and my place within the family. I learned to appreciate the love and trust that did remain, cherishing those bonds with a renewed sense of purpose. In the end, the story of the necklace was not just one of betrayal and revenge, but also of quieter victories and the peace that comes after a storm. With each day, I embraced the notion that healing, both personal and familial, is an uneven path, but ultimately one worth walking. As I stood by my window one evening, enveloped in the soft glow of the setting sun, I felt a gentle assurance. The world would keep spinning, and so would we. Not despite our scars, but because of them. In the grand tapestry of life, it was just one thread, vivid and painful, yet ultimately strengthening the weave. And while some truths may never change, the choices we make in their wake define who we are and who we become. With that understanding, I closed my eyes, grateful for the necklace that brought clarity, if not closure, and for the quiet triumph etched into its every glimmer.